we are with the filmmaker behind Not Your Skin, a wonderful documentary that everyone just saw, so everyone knows what the film is about. And I want to applaud you. First of all, I promise if we'd had been able to have a full theater of audience members, they would have applauded at the end. It's so
Oh, that's okay.
it's such a wonderfully made film, and your heart is in such a good place. Um, I actually have, after watching it, my second viewing, I thought
Hmm.
I'd start with a funny question, because normally the question is always, where'd you get the idea? How did
Yeah,
this project start? But what I'd love to ask is, how did you know to stop? Because I love your subject so much.
right,
And
right.
like Kylie, like I want to see her.
Yeah,
First off, she's 10 and her maturity levels blowing me away. And I want to see her at 12 and
yeah.
14. Like, how did you know? Like, was it just logistics? You said, okay, I have to edit what I have now, or?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that you think exactly the way I was thinking, because once I knew the people that I'm gonna be filming, and once I met them and like started session one, I realized very quickly that there is no end to these stories ever. And before I started filming this film, I really didn't know enough about the transgender community. I didn't know anybody in person. Like I was getting into it completely uneducated and just learning from the people. And after a few shoots, I was like, okay, well, this is gonna be tough. Like there is no ending ever, because people like that live it their whole life, and there is always things changing, and they dealing with new issues. So I think, yeah, I mean, at some point I told myself, I'm not really ending this movie. This is just part one. And I just, told myself I'll keep filming and follow some of these people, because at that point I became friends and it became personal. I was like, I'll just keep following these stories, which obviously 2020 came and that's not possible. um, you just follow them on paper, Kano, and in your mind. But I ended it thinking this is part one, and there was no ending to me, which, as you can tell, it didn't end. It's for Kylie especially. Everything was just starting. She's 13 now. I mean, this is where really we should start filming again. Um, yeah. So stories like that about people and their real lives. It's. I guess it's just work in progress forever. Yeah.
Forever, which is
Yeah.
lovely. And there's lots of other, I know there's other documentaries that revisit the same
Yeah.
people over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
How did you find everyone?
Yeah, that was probably the hardest part. Everything else was so easy. But finding people who would talk to me without having, the actual personal connection was almost impossible. I mean, I was literally just cold calling, like on Facebook, asking people, joining groups, kind of throwing my previous work out there and just saying, can I film anybody? Would anybody share their story with me? So I think finding the main four stories that I ended up with took me like, once that was done, I was ready to film. Everything was ready, but it took me months, and it ended up being lots of these people were friends of friends of friends that saw my post on Facebook and said, hey, I know somebody whom I know somebody. Um, because if you are not in the community, it's really hard to get in, especially not being trans. Lots of the trans people have been hurt through their life so much, they don't want to talk to anybody who is not like them. They don't want to talk to cis women. So that was challenging, but I mean, at the end I ended up, I think, with the best. I love the age, that I had. The youngest was 10 and the oldest was 70. I wanted to cover all different parts of life, and you cannot do it really unless you have different subjects with different age groups and different experiences. So I ended up being lucky, but the beginning was the hardest. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wondered if you had sought those ages, because I wish my memory was better, but the young woman who, by the way, so was it also intentional that the people you spoke to, all their families seem really wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's, that's kind of where the documentary doesn't cover the whole story, because these, all these people were people who had support groups, right? So usually, when I was starting to film, the statistics was that at least half of trans people will just not make it because their families don't support them. So the reason I was able to film anybody was because they made it, they survived. Lots of them commit suicides, or they are, there is crime committed on transgender people. So it's hard to cover what you cannot cover because it's just not there. Somebody who is not being supported in who they are not gonna is not gonna get on camera, and because they have enough just to survive every day. So try to
Yeah.
show a little bit in Lindsay's story, but um it doesn't go far enough just because she lived at a whole different time. So it wasn't so much about support or not support, and more about there was no knowledge. It didn't exist when she was young and starting, her life.
Yeah, it really didn't.
Yeah,
But also, it's not your job to show every possible aspect of it.
yeah,
And in a way, you made a film. I'm grateful for your film because it's a film that you can show a young person.
yeah,
It'll be very mind opening, just about acceptance.
yeah.
Uh,
And
we're
that's kind
actually
of what I wanted. Yeah, it's, after our first showing, a bunch of people came up to me, and some of them from universities and connections to schools. And, we ended up sending the film right away to a bunch of schools just to be part of curriculum, because I did want to have it, not every thing could be really told, but the positive message and the positive outlook, this is how it should be presented. Like if you're gonna have take a class trans, people one-on-one 101 or something. So it gives you the basics. It doesn't go, as you say, it's not every aspect of the story, and it's not going deep enough. It just, can we bring you on the same page where we are? Can you just understand? you know you don't have to like it, but can you be open-minded?
Yeah, and I
So
don't think you'd get very far, excuse me, with a school age
yeah,
classroom if it were heavy handed and dealt with the
yeah,
really hard sides, because then I think the kids might tune out. So
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah. I
definitely
mean,
a
I
great
think a
film.
little bit, there was a little bit of bullying definitely mentioned from Kylie and from Nicole Maines. So I think it gives a little bit of a touch of what it could be. I think they both mention it, what would have happened if they didn't have the support. But as you say, there is no need. All my films, I always, like, I think there is so much bad in the world. I try to bring the good part about it. I want the films to be fun to watch and watch again. I myself, I can't watch anything heavy duty ever. So I try to make films I could watch, and even with a subject like that, it's possible and you can do it.
Oh yeah,
um
and you gave us. I mean, we heard a lot of trials and tribulations. I mean,
yeah,
it's definitely not. It's not through rose-colored glasses.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Well, so listening to you, I mean, I'm aware now. So you decided you wanted to make a film that embraced this community, and
yeah.
then you went. So what was your inspiration for deciding to do that?
So even like, this was pre-production. This was still when Obama was in the office. So you can understand that the time back then was very different. I mean, President Obama was supporting trans communities and trying to change the laws and giving them a chance, and even involving, being able to join military. So there was lots of talk about trans issues, and I followed it for a while. And from personal point of view, I still just didn't understand, for myself. There was so much written, and for myself, I still didn't exactly get it because I just didn't know anybody. And I was like, well, how would I understand? I was like, I need to know somebody. That's the only way you understand other people's feelings, if you connect on a personal level. And that's where it kind of started, because of course, when I came to that idea, and because I'm a documentary filmmaker, I'm like, if I get to know somebody, I need to document this. I need to film really from the beginning. As I would be learning, I was asking questions that I was really asking. I didn't know the answers. And I figured if I have these questions, probably lots of other people have these questions. So for me, the job was to explain it to myself. And I did that. So I hopefully if I got it and I actually embraced it and learned to love everybody, in the film so much, like dearest friends, then I figured everybody else, could probably do it if they hear the same story and have maybe the same questions I had. So yeah, that's where it started. It was, by the time I started it and by the time it ended, it was just an unfortunate situation already here. So politically, we took lots of steps back in terms of supporting the trans communities.
And so obviously a hand would go up in the theater right now and ask, so how many years were you shooting for, or
Uh,
preparing?
yeah, I think altogether maybe 2 years. I want to say, I think I started 2016, 15, 16, and ended around 2018, 19, beginning of 19. Yeah, so 2, 3 years. And I was still filming as I was editing. I edit myself and I filmed some of it myself, but I had, also other camera people because I'm not the best camera person, but the way I film, sometimes you just don't know what happens on the other side. So I always have more cameras than not all of them are super set up and lit correctly, but just to catch the footage, capture it in between takes. So we were still filming when I was editing, basically, until, as you said, at some point I had to end it. I still had footage, but it was, I was trying to not to also make it too long, I think, because I was trying to cater towards younger audience too. And anything over an hour, people lose, I think, patience, interest. It's just too much information. It's already so much information. So I was shooting for an hour and hoping not to go much further than that, so people could just kind of get their first kind of class, let's say, and and have their basic everything that needed to be said, I think.
Yeah, and I meant, so, and 2 years of editing, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, because
Yeah.
editing always, even though that's my favorite part, really, because I think that's where, as an editor, you kind of writing the movie, really, and I never knew ahead of time what is everybody gonna say and how things are gonna go. And you just don't know. These are real stories, so you don't have it written. There is no, beginning, middle, and end. It's just what's happening. So every time I filmed more, the story changed a little bit of what I thought is maybe more important. And then I learned something else. I went back to all of the families and filmed again. Throughout the picture, CJ had the surgery, so then you didn't know the outcome of that. So that's really hard. I also thought it was kind of a good time to kind of end there, because there can be a whole another movie just about what he went through 2 years after, but then it gets very medical, and the terms gets a little too detailed. So if I can get all the way there, I just figured, let's end it kind of on an open end in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I hit you. You made me lose my words, because
Yeah.
I'm just imagining, just, yeah. I mean, the film finishes with him in pain still,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
So that's the hard part, because you now have a story and you have the footage and you can keep going back and be filming. But it doesn't mean if it's positive or negative 2 months later that that's what it was. It can change. It's a surgery, it's a medical procedure. So in that sense, I was hoping we kind of pick up again at Nicole Maines. She already had the surgery, we know where she is and how that's going. Not the same surgery, but went through a surgery. And hopefully people will kind of understand that it's a medical procedure, elective medical procedure, which is so much worse. You're putting a perfectly healthy functioning body under a knife, and you don't know which way you come out, just because you don't know how your body reacts. So yeah, it's, as I said, it's for me, even as I was editing, you know, still talking to CJ, Lisa, and everybody. Kylie, you know, Kylie was going for her appointments, whether or not she should start the hormone therapy and or postpone the puberty. So that all is happening while you are editing story that happened 3 months ago or a year ago, you know. um that's challenging. You, yeah, you never want to end, so at some point I had to end.
Such a challenge. I love that people are getting an insight into just how challenging documentary can be.
Yeah,
It's a you're trying to paint on a ship on rocky seas and it just doesn't stop moving.
yeah, because you always feel you are behind, you know, whatever you just told, it's no longer that, you know. So you kind of have to look at it, I guess, as a, like a, it's, you know, it's kind of like a news article that will not matter really later, but with this kind of subject, it will always matter how everybody dealt with the issues at that particular moment, you know, whether or not they are there, you know, 2 years later. That's just a different movie and different story. So
Yeah, exactly. It's true. It's a piece of time in their
yeah,
lives,
yeah,
and and that was what was so great about you having people at different stages of
yeah,
life that we get a better view. You know,
yeah,
we see falling in love, and
yeah,
we see, you know,
yeah, that's what
enjoying
I liked.
a
Yeah, that they shared.
grandparent.
Yeah, yeah, that's that actually, when you look at it like from far away, then it's like, okay, and they live just regular life, really, you know. This is
Absolutely,
just the
that was
side.
what we were trying to do
Yeah,
4.5, 5 years ago. Was just say,
yeah,
yes, we can just accept
yeah,
everyone and let people be happy.
yeah, because if it doesn't influence you, why should it worry you, you know?
Yeah, that's one I just don't understand. I'll never
Yeah,
understand why
yeah,
you have to live my way. But
yeah, it's really hard, and it was really hard because, you know, I have like a small community around me. Every time I make a documentary, I usually get so much support from friends and just everybody, you know. And this was the first film that I did not, you know, I had close friends telling me, hey, you know, I know you're doing your thing, but I do not support this. And they would tell me this. And I'm like, but you don't know what you don't support. You don't, do you know anything? You know? And and so for me, like the little achievement at the end was that I took the film, and these friends or these people who didn't support me, I sent it to them. And I said, I understand, you know, you don't have anything to do with this, with my work, with me. Can you just watch this? Just watch it. And all of them got back to me that I changed their mind, you know, not to the point that they would now, you know, be super advocating for whatever issues, but to the point they no longer hate it, and they understand that it's not a choice, which is, I think, really the most important thing, you know.
yeah, that's beautiful that you were able to open
Yeah,
people's perspectives and open their minds a little.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, we've been chatting for a while. Is there any crew members or contributors, anyone that deserves a mention before we run?
You know, everybody really, I mean, I had really good little crew, you know, but I think the biggest mention would go to everybody in the film, you know, CJ, Lisa, Lindsay, Kylie, and her mother. I mean, she's an angel, her mother, you know, Nicole. So just the fact they let me film and they share their basically everything so private with me, and had no background with me. There was no, they just trusted me without knowing me at all. We met that year, first time ever. The biggest thanks goes to them, you know, for sharing and trusting, because, you know, filmmaking is a creative process, and the story can go, you know, anyway. So they are
They're all
amazing
happy.
people.
They've seen it and they feel
Yeah,
good.
yeah, Lindsay, you know, for Lindsay it was, I mean, first time she really talked about her past, you know, with her first wife and children. I got her daughter and granddaughter on camera, and that was incredible because, you know, they would not always consider that this is something they want to be part of, you know. So and it went the other way too. She has a son who didn't want to be part of it, you know, and you can kind of see that there is still family issues that keep continuing. So big thanks to all of them. You know, they are absolutely the best and the bravest people I ever met, for sure.
Yeah, please actually extend our appreciation from the film festival uh,
Yeah,
to everyone
I
involved.
agree.
I think it's a beautiful thing that everyone did, and wonderful that you made this happen.
Yeah, and thank you so much, you guys, you know, decided to show it, because especially this time, people are a little bit afraid of the subject again, and it's not something that people find is a priority right now, you know. So it's hard to get screen time and, you know, show people. So I appreciate it. I know it's difficult to always choose few films. So
Well, for me, I would think I'm biased, but I would think every festival you submit to would accept this film because it's an important subject, and it's well made. And how could you watch these people and say, well, I wouldn't want more audience to see this?
right, right, yeah.
So I don't understand
Thank
if
you.
others wouldn't.
Really nice.
All right, well, sorry, but I'll hit stop on the record.
No worries.